Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah wa ala alihi subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alim al hakim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Co-reflection and weighing up statements from different traditions. And we finished by giving a kind of definition of tasawwuf or Sufism. Maybe that's where we should start today. So I'll give you the definition which is given by Al-Habib Umar bin Hafiz, one of our teachers in Tarim. He says, التصوف هو حسن العمل والاتصاف بمقتضى خطاب الحق سبحانه وتعالى ورسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه ذوقا وتحققا. He says that tasawwuf is good action and embodying the qualities of what has been addressed by the True One, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and His Messenger, with dhawq, which means to taste, wa tahaqqaqan, and in the hope of realization. That to me sounds quite a heavy definition. There's an older definition, which is something which I find I'm a bit more comfortable, which is good character. Tasawwuf is good character. And I find that easier to work with because I'm a simple man. And it makes sense that you can weigh up, how can I be good in this situation? So tasawwuf actually has a manifestation in action. So you say, how can I be good in this situation? And I think since the last time I was here, this time I had a change of jobs. And I started to work in a school for very, very traumatized young children. But the reason why they were there was because no one else can have them, because they're so violent. So this is one of my regular schools, but what had happened, all the management had just left. The school still has to run, and so I had to go in effect, to kind of save the school or to keep the school ticking over. And it was one of the best experiences I had, including the black eyes, my broken glasses, bruised heads, cuts and bruises, because it gave me an opportunity to work in a completely different way. And I went to work, and it's very easy to show good character when people are being nice to you. But when somebody's spitting in your face and kicking you, punching you and swearing at you, that's more difficult to show good character. It's more difficult to forgive somebody who does that to you and abuses you day in, day out. These kids are really traumatized and they have really violent behavior. They're just one step short of prison. And every day I used to go to school first of all, I'd spend an hour getting there, and I'd be making dua for these kids all the way, and their parents and their families. And then when I was getting hit and punched and kicked and spat at, that was the time where I really had the first real test of what do I actually believe. Because I believe that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the ideal model, he is the ideal person, and he has the ideal mercy. He has the complete mercy. But I've never had to test that because nobody spat in my face before. Well, not since 1976, but that's a different story. It was a Wolverhampton Wanderers match. Anyway, but now it's happening day in, day out. I'm getting abused, kicked, punched, and it was great because it was the first time I really faced challenges to my deen. And I felt that I was actually practicing the deen for the first time. Even though there were times where I missed Jum'ah, and I've never missed Jum'ah for years. And the reason was because Fridays, these kids go into crisis. Because Saturday is the day when they don't come to school. And their lives are so ugly that 2 days without them having people like us around, they have to be with their parents, those that have parents. And that means drugs, alcohol, violence, abuse. So Fridays are difficult days. And then I realised every single Friday I was dealing with crisis from 11 o'clock till 3:30. And Jum'ah always falls at that time. And I ended up missing Jum'ah on a regular basis. And I just put my hands up and I thought, I have to choose. And I chose that I'm not going to ask any faqih, and I shouldn't say this in front of your father, because my choice was these kids need me. These kids need me. And that was the first time I understood anything about tasawwuf. So when I have that definition, it's the definition of Sahrawardi. He said, Man zada alayka fil khulq, zada alayka fil tasawwuf. Whoever has better character, who increases in character, he's increased in tasawwuf. So that's what my definition is. And so when we go through the book, you can take any of the definitions I've thrown at you, but this is what mine. And perhaps this is an opportunity if anybody else wants to give me a definition, please feel free. This is the time to speak and share with us. Haj Mustafa, please. Okay, he mentioned Al-Junaid this morning. No, yesterday, sorry. Now, Al-Junaid, he actually says the principles of tasawwuf are built on the characteristics of 8 prophets. And this starts to help us to understand, take us through this book. If you make a note of this, he says the generosity of Ibrahim, the sakha of Ibrahim, the generosity of Ibrahim, the patience, the sabr of Ayyub, of Job, the contentment, the rida, contentment of Ishaq, Isaac, the indicating of Zachariah. Because sometimes, one of the things somebody said yesterday was about those who know, don't talk. Zachariah and Sayyidatuna Maryam were told not to talk, but to do ishara. فَأَشَارَتْ إِلَيْهِ فَقَالَ, and then they said, كَيْفَ نُكَلِّمُ مَنْ كَانَ فِي الْمَهْدِ صَبِيًّا. So they're indicating. So tasawwuf is sometimes about indicating, the indicating of Zachariah, rather than the speech of the Sufis. So this is, and then he says the ghurba, the seclusion, that's how it's the ghurba, like the distance, the cutting off, the ghurba of Yahya, of John the Baptist. He cut himself off into the desert. He said the siyaha, the wandering of Isa. And finally the faqr, the poverty of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he said a tasawwuf is built on these 8 characteristics. Its beginning is knowledge. Its middle is action. And its ending is mawhiba, is receiving gifts. But it starts with knowledge. You can't be a Sufi without knowledge. That's the understanding that we have of the people of Ahl Sunnah, is that the knowledge has to be based. So some of those statements, when we talked about religion and spirituality being separate, actually they're not. Religion helps, or the deen helps your spirituality. Spirituality can't be on its own, and likewise religion, when it's devoid of spirituality, is nothing. Right, any questions before we move into the text? Marhaba. MashaAllah. You couldn't let that pass. I'm glad, because I've got a quote for you which explains this. And it's from, I'll read it to you. And can I come back to that? If I don't come back to it in 5 minutes, ask me again. And the reason why is because I want to explain where the quote came from and why it's significant to me. Okay, so moving on, for those people that do have the text in front of them, starting on page 1, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa sallim. Nice easy statement. And then it says, there's an introduction to who Abu Abdurrahman as-Sulami is, the author of the text. I'm not going to read any of it. Why? Because we don't have time. And I just want to give you 2 points about Abu Abdurrahman as-Sulami. 2 points which I think are important. The first one is that he lived at a time when there were 3 people claiming to be the Khalifa. There were 3 people claiming to be the Khalifa. So there was a Khilafah in Cairo. There was a Khilafah in Spain, the Umayyads. And there was a Khilafah in Damascus, who were the Abbasids. So the Abbasids, the Fatimids and the Umayyads. But the Abbasids didn't actually rule anything. Why? Because they never left Damascus. So what happened was all of the east, which was nominally Abbasid, was actually run by warlords. And where he grew up, it was the Buyid Shia warlords who ruled that part of the world. So why am I saying all of this? I'm just telling you, he lived when the world was a mess. That's the summary. He lived when the world was a mess. Politically, Islamically, sectarian word. It was a mess. And that's why I like him so much, because it's the most relevant Sufi scholar of the past, or one of, because all the others have got their own specialities, but what's special about him, Abu Abdurrahman as-Sulami, is the world was in a mess. And some of what he says and what he teaches helps us to understand the mess that we're living in, because we're facing these questions all. So what do you say about the Islamic State? And what do you say about this? And what do you say about, what do you say? Oh my God, give me a break. We not just talk about Allah for a change? Because we don't. So when he gets us back to talk about the Quran and the Sunnah, he's doing it actually he's talking to me and you. Because we're living in the same mess that he lived in. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that he is the only author that I know of, or has written a book which is translated now into English, which deals with women Sufis. His text is called Early Sufi Women. In the Arabic, the original was Dhikr al-Niswat al-Muta'abbidat Sufiyat. And it's translated as the Early Sufi Women. And why is that important? It's because we're also living in a time where gender has become a really major issue. Probably when you left the UK, there was a rise in Muslim schools. And some of those Muslim schools were doing very, very well. And some of them were really terrible. But now, it doesn't matter whether you're really terrible or you're really good. It depends on how you approach gender. That's whether you're going to remain as a school or not. Because gender is now the touchstone of where you fit in the world. And if a mosque has the right attitude towards gender, it's okay. And if it doesn't, it's a terrorist mosque. It's got nothing to do with... So gender is actually a very, very important issue now. And at the time when Abu Abdurrahman as-Sulami was writing, it wasn't. So why did he write about women Sufis? Except to help us understand gender issues. It's almost as if he's put this in our path for us to make it clear to us, or help us to reflect on who we are, how we relate to other people. In particular, how do we relate to questions about gender? And I noticed that the next session after this is there's a men's session and a women's session. I'm not saying it's got anything to do with it, but we obviously are starting to think in gender. Well, we've always thought in gender terms, but now it's much more apparent. Anyway, that's why I thought it was interesting. He's an interesting person. And I'm going to read one paragraph from the first 3 pages where he says, while not all the hadiths, this is page 2, anyone that's got the text in, while not all of the hadiths in Al-Sulami's collection are authentic, I wouldn't have used the word authentic. I would have used proven to be authentic, or interrogated in their authenticity, because it implies that they're not authentic. While not all the hadith in Al-Sulami's collection are authentic, the principles they demonstrate are, without doubt, central to Sufism and, consequently, compliant with the Sharia. In other words, if you want to study this book in terms of technical sanad, forget it. Go and read another book, all right? But if you want something which you know is solid and is true, read the book. Carry on. So that's the introduction done. I'll go back to your question. The reason why I wanted to go read that first was because this quote actually is from the footnotes or the introduction to the English translation of this book, Early Sufi Women. Right. Among the Syrian Christians in the 4th century Christian era, peripatetic wandering and travel for the sake of religion exemplified the ascetic path. Ibn Jawzi makes a similar claim for Athama. Sa'id ibn Abdalaziz said, we know of no one who has made more vows to travel than has done so, and has done so than Athama. Why do I quote that? And why did I want to say it first? Athama was one of the great women of the 3rd century. She is the great niece of Abu Darda. So her father and the granddaughter of Abu Darda are brother and sister. So she's close to the Prophet ﷺ, and she rises to this rank of tasawwuf, which is phenomenal. And Sa'id ibn Abdalaziz, who people know as a great ascetic, a great scholar, a great wali, a great scholar of fiqh and hadith, he's saying, I've never met anybody like this woman. And then he mentions specifically what she does. She says she travels for Allah more than anybody else travels for Allah. And you're thinking, why has he picked that point out? Because 2 things why it's important. When you wanted to know what does it mean about the siyaha of Jesus. Jesus just got up and moved. Allah moved him. He was born like that. He was sent, or his mother was sent to Bethlehem on the way to Nazareth. And he ended up in Beit al-Laham, in the middle of nowhere, on his way to Nazareth. So, on the way from Nazareth, sorry. And he's born like that. He just wanders because Allah picks him up and moves him. And if you know the Sufis, that's how tasawwuf is. Sometimes I'll give you an example of one of the Sufis in England. His name is Shaykh Muhammad Sadiq. He's completely what we call majdoob. Like, how do you translate majdoob into English? Absorbed. Oh, he's so polite. You know, I love Shaykh Muhammad Muslim. He has such a beautiful way of, basically it means kind of crazy. They're so absorbed in their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they appear crazy. But absorbed, we'll use the word absorbed. He's so absorbed in his love for Allah that people like me don't understand him. Normal people don't understand these majadhib. They just do crazy things. And this guy, subhanAllah, one day he was in Glasgow, in London. No, sorry, he was in Blackburn. And he said to his students, I'm going to Glasgow now. Tell them. And tell them to make tea, not Wahhabi tea. I'm quoting exactly what the instructions were. So his people thought, okay, who do we know in Glasgow? So they phoned somebody and says, Shaykh is coming to Glasgow and he wants tea, but not Wahhabi tea. So this guy thinks, oh, what am I going to do? So he phones Abdalaziz and says, Shaykh Muhammad Sadiq is on his way to Glasgow. Be prepared, he wants tea and not Wahhabi tea. I have no idea what he's talking about. He turns up at my house and he says, okay, bring me tea. Okay, I will try and make tea. I make tea. I have no idea what Wahhabi tea is, what Sufi tea is, but I make him tea the best I can. He looks at it, he says, not too bad. Now, why did I come? Now, why did I come? I'm thinking, I have no idea why you came. He says, you better speak quickly because I need the toilet. Okay. And I don't know what to say. What would you say if this has happened to you? This sheikh just turns up and he says, you asked me something a few months ago. What was it? I says, I wanted to read a hadith to you. And I says, what did I say? I says, you said no. He says, go away. I says, okay. What was the hadith? I says, it was from a book called, and I gave him what the title of the book was, the commentary on the Mukhtasar of Bukhari. You don't need to read that. That's why I told you no. I think I need the bathroom. Actually, there are 4 hadith you need to read. Go and get the book. He got the book, I read, he says, number, this one, and this hadith, and the 4th one. So I read these 4 hadith. Khalas, now I know I came. Time to go. And then everybody had realized why he'd come. It's because he actually had a wedding invitation for that day. And that's why they phoned the guy to say, he's coming to Glasgow, make sure he's got tea. And the guy he thought, oh, he's coming for the wedding. And they says, but aren't you staying for the wedding? He says, what wedding? He says, there's a wedding. We thought you were here. That's why everybody's... And then he looked at me, he says, will I be breaking their heart if I leave now? This is his wording. Will I be breaking their heart if I leave now? What am I supposed to say? The answer is yeah. He comes, he has a cup of tea, he shouts Abdalaziz, listens to 4 hadith, and then he drives all the way back and says, that's what I came for. And you thought he was coming, of course you're going to break the man's heart. He says, I think he will be hurt. He says, okay, tell him to come here, we'll make Mawlid. He brought all the wedding guests to the house, they made Mawlid, then he left. Khalas, done my job. There's no logic. There is no way anybody can explain to me what happened there. But it happens to him all the time, and it happens to lots of these majadib. When Abdul Hadi asked me, am I coming? I says, if I'm not in Baghdad, inshallah, I will be here. And Abdul Hadi's thinking, he's crazy. He's too polite. He'll say, oh, he's so absorbed. But what you mean is, yeah, Abdulaziz is a bit crazy. He might turn up or he might not. And then when I say, yeah, I'm coming, then alhamdulillah, he's not as crazy as I thought he was, and I'm here. But that's siyaha. That happens to people. They just get up, and in tasawwuf, sometimes you'll see Sufis, they don't appear to have a particular reason. And I was just saying about Shaykh Afifuddin al-Jailani. He told somebody in Singapore, ask Abdulaziz when's the wedding. I'm coming to Europe for the wedding. He didn't say what wedding, he didn't say where in Europe, he just said, ask him when's the wedding, I'm coming to Europe for the wedding. And the guy didn't give any more information, and so I didn't give him any more. I says, inshallah, if there's a wedding, I'll tell you. And of course, what he meant was, I'm going to get married. But he didn't quite say that. And so the guy's getting, so who's getting married? Who's getting married? Of course, I don't, nobody knows I might be getting married. Shaykh Afifuddin hasn't even, eventually Shaykh Afifuddin phones a week later, tells this guy to phone him, tell him the wedding on the 24th of November in Denmark. Okay, khalas, I'm getting married on the 24th of November in Denmark. So I phone them up and say, look, I'm getting married on the 24th of November in Denmark. And of course the bride, Sarah's, Idris's mum, yeah, it's okay, that's cool. Everyone else thinks I'm completely crazy. Normally people don't do things that way, but Shaykh Afifuddin says that's how it's to be. Now I know that's divinely planned, and you need to submit to certain things. And when you know a real Sufi, when you've been exposed to a real Sufi, you don't mess them, ever. If that Shaykh Muhammad Sadiq wants tea, you make him tea, the best possible tea you can make. I have no idea what he meant by Wahhabi tea. Well, I didn't at the time. Apparently it means very strong tea. I don't know. But I don't know what he meant, all right? But they're his words. When Shaykh Afifuddin says the wedding is at the 24th of August, or 24th of November, khalas. So siyaha is like, that's what I think Junaid means. Tayyib. Any other questions? I do want to read at least one hadith from the 40 hadith before the weekend's over. Tayyib. Right, let's move on to the text, inshallah. Now, I'm only joking. Please, I said yesterday, this is a chance for us to talk, and if anyone's got questions, please, let's present them to either Hajj Mustafa or Shaykh. Now people are too shy to ask anything. Tayyib, okay, then we'll read some more and then I'll ask you some difficult questions. طيب باب الدليل على أن الصوفية هم رفقاء رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Proof, a chapter on the proof that the Sufis are actually the companions, and the word he uses is rufaqa. Rafiq is a friend. It also means somebody who you keep company with. Nashat said she's travelled by plane with me, and now she's travelled by car. So, alhamdulillah, now she's also got the product of the marriage of the 24th of November 2013, Idris in her lap. And she is my rafiqa, as is her brother, my rafiq, who we've travelled many, many times. So the word rafiq is somebody who keeps company. Not a companion, but somebody who has this rifq between them. So this is to say, to prove that the Sufis are the rufaqa, are the rafiqs of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. أخبار محمد بن سعد الأنماطي حديث حدثنا الحسن بن علي بن يحيى بن السلام حدثنا محمد بن علي الترمذي حدثنا سعيد بن حاتم البلغي حدثنا سهل بن ابن أسلم بن حلاد بن محمد بن أبي حمزة السكري عن يزيد النحوي عن إكرمة عن ابن عباس قال. So the only reason I read that is to show that there's a chain of this hadith that goes all the way to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and as you can see, it's not that long. Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami is close to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he narrates this hadith that Ibn Abbas said the following: وقف رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يوما. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam stood up على أصحاب الصفة, in front of a group of people called the Ashab al-Sufa, the people of the Sufa. Now, the Sufa, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam built his mosque around certain pillars. And these pillars have a very, very important significance, because when Hajj Mustafa had mentioned he was on his way to the Roda, what is now called the Roda were the places where those pillars are. And the pillars that were marked then are the pillars which were originally tree trunks. And when we talked yesterday, somebody was asking me about what did they call me, and they says he's a tree-hugging hippie. And I found that a compliment, and what they meant it as an insult. And I says, actually, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is well known for being a tree hugger. There's hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came down from his mimbar and he hugged these pillars, which were trees. He was a tree hugger. He also recommended that we go out and we embrace nature, literally. So, yeah, I'm a tree hugging Sufi hippie. Deal with it. This guy obviously drinks Wahhabi tea. So then I pointed out, and then I mentioned all of these things about, actually, this is from the Sunnah. But these pillars were there. And then at the end of the pillars, he put the only place which had shade. So these were wooden planks on either end with a tin or covered sheet over the top. And anybody that had nowhere to live lived under this. And sometimes there were 10 people, sometimes there were 80 people, sometimes there were 200 people, sometimes there were families who lived there. There were families who would live there. Sometimes women would live there alone as well. The Prophet ﷺ gave specific permission for certain women to stay there. So this was called the Ahl Sufa. Now nobody stayed there. Generally, people didn't stay there if they had somewhere to live. So these are the poorest people. And sometimes the Prophet ﷺ gave permission to certain companions to stay there, who had places to live, but they wanted to be among the Ahl Sufa. So these people they have a special status. They're mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا تترد الذين يدعون ربهم بالغداوة والعشي يريدون وجهه. Repel not those who call on their Lord morning and evening, seeking His countenance. That's Surah Al-An'am, which is Surah 6, verse 52. So these people are special. They're mentioned in the Quran. So the Prophet ﷺ comes out to them, Yawman ala ashabi sufa fara faqrahum, and he sees their poverty. What did we say? There were 8 qualities. What's the quality that's associated with the Prophet ﷺ? Poverty. Wara'a faqrahum, and he saw their poverty. Wajuhdahum, and their juhd, their effort. Wutib qulubahum, and the purity, the gentleness, the sweetness of their hearts. So he looked at them and he said this, فَقَالَ أَبْشِرُوا يَا أَصْحَابَ الصُّفَّةِ, what good news there are for you. مَنْ بَقِيَ عَلَى مِنْ أُمَّتِ عَلَى نَعْتِ الَّذِي أَنْتُمْ عَلَيْهِ, whoever has the characteristics that you have, رَاضِيًا بِمَا فِيهِ, content about what their state is, فَإِنُّ مِنْ رُفَقَاءِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, they will be my companions on the day of judgment. So if you have these qualities that are being, so Abu Abdurrahman as-Sulami is saying, these are the qualities that Ahl Sufa, and the Prophet ﷺ says, whoever has these qualities up until Yawm al-Qiyamah, khalas, I'll be with them on that day. When I said mutasawwif yesterday, the people who appear to be Sufis, you took that as a compliment, even though it could be presented as an insult. Pseudo-Sufis, or they appear to be Sufis. Why did he take it as a compliment? Because مَنْ تَشَبَّ بِقَوْمٍ فَهُوَ مِنْهُمْ. The Prophet ﷺ, whoever imitates a people will be counted among them. Whoever imitates a people would be counted among them. Now I could have worn my Nottingham Forest football shirt today, but they're being beaten again by Sheffield United. Last week we were beaten by Sheffield Wednesday. The week before was Blackburn Rovers. Why on earth would I wear a Nottingham Forest football shirt? Among the Sufis of the football fans are the Nottingham Forest fans. We have to have the most patience. We have had to put up with the most disappointment for the last 25 years since we won the European Championship. We are the Sufis of football. Okay. But as you can see, if anybody wants to know, anyone guess what football team I support?
The national team.
No, Nottingham Forest. And apparently there's a rumour that goes, which implies that I support a team in green in Glasgow. And alhamdulillah, they're going to win the treble again this year. Alhamdulillah wa shukrillah. Now, if I were to wear my green and white football shirt, who am I associating myself with? Celtic. And I'm not allowed to wear that. I will lose my job at work if I wear a Celtic shirt, because it's illegal in Scotland for a teacher to side with either team. That's another story. but this feeling for your team, this feeling that you allow your children to wear a particular football strip, which is?
So many.
Well, yesterday they were in France.
Yeah, Liverpool, it's Juventus, it's everything.
Well, Liverpool,
It's the French.
I was going to say it was the French yesterday.
Yeah.
Liverpool, that's fine, alhamdulillah wa shukrillah. But Juventus, why? Why would you do that to your children? You know, we will report you for child protection. Or actually, it's not as bad as Manchester United, but alhamdulillah. So anyway, you get what I'm saying. The associations that you have are to do with your aspirations, with your love. And even though he may not be a full Sufi, he loves the Sufis. He wears the clothes of the Sufis. مَنْ تَشَبَّ بِقَوْمٍ فَهُوَ مِنْهُمْ. Whoever imitates a people will be counted amongst them. So who are these Ahl Sufa? Because this is an important hadith, and if we do none of the others, then you can read the other 39 on your own. Okay. The Ahl Sufa were very hungry a lot of the time. Can I tell a quick story which is not directly related? Well, it's kind of related, so I don't need permission. I'll tell you. Abu Hurairah was one of the Ahl Sufa, and he was so hungry that he thought, I'm just going to hang about with people that have got food until somebody gives me something. So I'll hang about outside Abu Bakr as-Siddiq's house, because he's bound to have something to eat. So I'll wait until he comes home, and then I'll ask him a question. So Abu Bakr as-Siddiq comes home, and he says, "Ya Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, tell me the answer to this question, please." And he's thinking, he's going to invite me in and give me something to eat or drink. So he asks him the question. Abu Bakr says, "Yeah, this is the answer," and he goes into his house. Thinking, that backfired, didn't it? So he said, "Okay, Umar ibn Khattab." Or was it the other way? I think it was Umar ibn Khattab first, and the same thing happened. He's thinking, I'm never going to get any food. So he thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to ask the Prophet ﷺ direct. I'll just wait outside his house. So he's waiting outside the house of the Prophet ﷺ, waiting for him to come home. "Ya Rasulullah, I have a question for you." He's, "Marhaba, come on in, let's ask." Yes, food. And he admits the only reason he's asking the question is because he's so hungry, he needs to eat. He doesn't want to know the answer to the question, so he's invited in. And the Prophet ﷺ asks his family, "Have we got any food or drink or anything?" And Sayyidatuna Aisha says, "Yes, alhamdulillah, we have a glass of milk." And he says, "Good, Ya Abu Hurairah, let's go to the mosque." And he's thinking, what? I thought the plan was, I'm going to drink. And he says, "Yes, let's go. We can share the milk." I think, share the milk? The two of us? Okay, it's barakah. Goes to the mosque and he says, "Call the Ahl Sufa." And he's thinking, Ahl Sufa, there's 80 of them, usually. And at the moment, there's 200. I told you it expands. And he's thinking, one glass of milk for 200 companions. And then he calls them all. And then he says, "Ya Abahir, oh Abu Hurairah, isqihum." Give them the milk. And he's thinking, 200 people, one glass of milk, and I have to pour. That means I'm number 200. So he pours, and he pours, and he pours, and he pours, and every single one of them drinks to their fill. And it gets to number 200, that's Abu Hurairah. And he says, "Ya Abahir, ishrab, oh Abu Hurairah, drink." And he's thinking, alhamdulillah, and he drinks, and he drinks, and he drinks, and he's full. He's thinking, yeah, barakah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam looks at him, "Ya Abahir, ishrab, drink." This is a command. So he drinks as much as he possibly can. He was full the first time. And he puts it down. "Ya Abahir, ishrab." And he looks at it and says, "Ya Rasul, laysa ilahi sabil." It's not possible. There's no more room. So this is the Ahl Sufa. It's kind of related. So generally they're hungry, they're tired, and they kind of collapse in their prayer. Their clothes are the people who live at the back of the mosque and eat or drink when Abu Hurairah shares a glass of milk with 200 of them. They're not, these are companions, but they're special companions. So it was quite normal for them to just kind of collapse. And some of them would collapse regularly in their prayers. And one Bedouin came. And this Bedouin came and he saw what the Ahl Sufa, one of the Ahl Sufa collapsed in the Salah. And he turns after the Salah, "Ha'ula'i al-majanin." These people are crazy. These people are crazy. And the Prophet ﷺ turns to him and says, "لو تعلمون ما لكم عند الله لأحببتكم أن تزدادوا فاق وحاجة." Related by Tirmidhi. He said, if you only knew what they had from Allah, if you only knew what they had from Allah, you would love to have more poverty and be in greater need. So the quality that they had of the Ahl Sufa, and he told them, these are other companions, if only you knew what they had, you would want more of it. So when we're talking about the rest of this book, whatever qualities we're talking about, just in case I don't get past hadith number 1, you'll see that this describes who the Ahl Sufa are. And the Ahl Sufa are the people of Sufism. They are What did we say yesterday? In the beginning, it was a reality with no name. Now we've got a word, but no reality. You want to know the reality? Abu Abdurrahman as-Sulami teaches it through the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now one of these was a man called Rabi' ibn Ka'b al-Aslami. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had he related to people differently. Each person was very, very special. And every one of the companions felt they were the most beloved companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's how he made everybody feel. That's one of his qualities, is everybody felt that they were the most beloved. And one of these companions just kind of, yeah, I'm the most. So he just went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, says, I'm the most beloved of all your companions, aren't I? And of course the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not allowed to lie. And he's not. The guy, he just makes everybody feel like that. But that's the quality of the Prophet. So he says, no, you're not. Can you imagine how deflated he must have felt? But it was his own, I wouldn't say his own fault, but he's teaching us a lesson. He says, so who is? He says, Abu Bakr. Oh. So, but he had this quality, and he related to people in very, very specific ways. So he would always talk to people about in the way that they needed to be talked to. So sometimes, and this is important in dawah, there was a guy who, in fact this has happened to me many a time, no one ever seems to embrace Islam. Whenever I talk about Islam, nobody ever seems to convert to Islam. You know, I give talks all over the world, and it's very, very rarely that anybody becomes Muslim through a talk like this. It's usually in the most bizarre of circumstances, and it's usually got something to do with music, football, or cannabis. But we'll leave it at that. But I'll give you some examples of music. There was one guy, he used to hang outside, and this is kind of all three combined, outside a mosque in Zanzibar, smoking cannabis. So he'd sit there completely stoned every night. These dreadlocks, marijuana in his hand. And so I go to this mosque. How are you doing? And I can see he's got dreadlocks, he's got marijuana. He probably likes Bob Marley. Maybe it was the wrong assumption. Actually, it wasn't. He loved Bob Marley. So we started to talk about Bob Marley. And we talked about Bob Marley every day for 3 or 4 days. And then one day he just turned round and he says, you know, I'm thinking of just giving up marijuana and Rastafarianism and becoming Muslim. And I'm thinking, if I gave you a lecture about Islam, I'm pretty certain you wouldn't become Muslim. Here's me talking about Bob Marley, and somehow Allah put something in your heart and you become Muslim. That's how it is. There was another occasion, some guy came with a bandana and earrings, and I could just tell he loved Eminem. And I thought, please. And I looked at his face, and I knew he supported Rangers. And I just thought, Allah, why do you do this to me? You're testing me so much. You send this guy to my house. He's a Rangers fan, and he likes Eminem, the two things I can't stand. Okay, marhaba, you're welcome in my house. This is real jihad and nafs. And we talked for 15, 20 minutes about all kinds of rubbish, including football and music. And then the guy that brought him to my house is kind of, make him Muslim, talk about Islam. Because the guy brought him to my house for a deliberate reason, because he wanted him to become Muslim so he could marry his sister. So this Muslim guy is bringing this non-Muslim guy with the bandana, kind of freaked out. And he's like thinking, bring him to the Shaykh will make him Muslim. And all the Shaykh does is talk about music and football, get on with it. So I get a phone call saying, can I have the book back? I says, look, all right, I'll get the book delivered to you. Wait for me at Lidl. In fact, don't wait at Lidl, I'll send the book with somebody. So the Muslim guy that brought Chris with him, he comes along and says, just deliver this book to Lidl. So he drives off, goes to Lidl, comes back 5 minutes later. Chris says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. Khalas, bye. He comes back, what happened there? You talk for 20 minutes about football or whatever time it was, and then he takes Shahada. What do you do to these people? It's not what you say. When you talk to people about Islam, it's not what you say. If you don't talk with your heart, you're never going to communicate with anybody. And if you communicate with your heart, it doesn't really matter what you say. You can be singing Bob Marley songs. And I know from experience, I quoted "No Woman, No Cry," and I gave him a commentary on it, and he became Muslim. Huh? I gave a commentary on "Closer to the Heart" by Rush, and the guy became Muslim. Huh? I talked about the difference between two different football players, and the guy became Muslim. It's not what you say. It's your heart communicating. And that's where we need to go back to. I don't know where we came to that, but the Prophet ﷺ had this. And one of the things he did, if you see the real teachers, they relate to people like this. And you sometimes think they do things sort of strangely. Like Shaykh Nuh Kella. Every night, in the middle of the night, 12 o'clock, he goes for a walk. And there's usually people hanging about outside his house, hoping that he's going to pick them, to take them for a walk. He doesn't speak. And I'm quite lucky, because almost every time I've been to Shaykh Nuh Kella's house, he's picked me. And people used to get furious. Why does he always pick out? He's not even a murid. But alhamdulillah, that's Shaykh Nuh. He does what he likes. The sheikhs, they choose they do what they like. So he doesn't talk. Or sometimes he talks. So he said he only said on one occasion, "Have you ever met a man called Omar from such and such a town?" And I had. He says, "He's a good man." That was it. The only thing he said to me. I went 3 trips with him. And once, he just pointed at the dog. He says, "Stop! Kif!" And the dog just stopped. And then, okay. And he walked off. That's the only communication we had. Once he says, "Kif!" to a dog. And the other time he says, "Have you met somebody called Omar?" You don't need to communicate. The Prophet ﷺ used to have this relationship. Sometimes he'd take somebody and he'd just walk with them. And he'll say a particular thing which was for them. Or he'll sit with somebody and he'll joke. He'll tease them about something. Or he'll start, "Do you know any poetry?" And he'll ask them to recite poetry. Tamim ad-Dari, he says, "Tell me about the Antichrist. Tell me about the Dajjal." So the Prophet so everybody had. So this Rabi' bin Ka'b al-Aslami, he'd kind of taken him aside, and then the Prophet ﷺ went to make wudu, and or went to the bathroom. And Rabi thought, he's going to need to make wudu. So he went, got his water, and he came and he's waiting there with the water. And so the Prophet ﷺ looks at him, he's really happy. So what does he say? "Salni." Ask me. Ask me. Salni. Ask me something. He's got the story. He's taken a companion aside. He's Salni. So one of these people that's hang out under there, he's taken them aside, gone for a little walk, gone to the bathroom. He comes out with the water. Salni. Ask me. Now you want to ask something. This is the time to ask the Prophet ﷺ. He says, "Marafaqatuk fil Jannah," your companionship in the garden. He's the Ahli Sufa. See the connection to the hadith that we've just mentioned? What he wanted was to be with the Prophet ﷺ. So he says, فَعِنِّي عَلَى نَفْسِكَ بِكَثْرَةِ السُّجُودِ. Help me to help you by doing lots of sajda, lots of prostration. Shaykh Muhammad Muslim said some very, very important things in the khutbah. And one of them was the importance of sajda tonight. And my understanding from what Shaykh Muhammad Muslim had said was not in terms of quantity, but was in terms of quality. That's what my understanding was. What the Prophet ﷺ said to this Ahli Sufa, "You help me to be my companion in the garden by doing sajda." Okay? And that's an important lesson. Okay, that's hadith number 1, inshallah. And I could give a whole load of quotes from the Sufi Women book, but I'll leave it to that. Any questions about what we've just said?
Yeah, I have a
Please. Marhaba, please.
Well, I mean, I've read somewhere that the people, what do you call them?
Ahl Sufa.
Al-Sufa.
I think the translation were the people of the bench.
Yes,
that's
that's what I was going to ask you.
yeah.
But you said it's not a bench.
No, it's not a bench. It was actually a veranda. It was a cover. The Sufa was actually, because the translation kind of implies they're like on a bench, but
Right.
that's not actually correct. They would. It was the only part in the original mosque which was covered, and then later the other mosque was covered with straw, and that was covered with something slightly different, which stood out. That's what the Ahl Sufa
So
were.
they were sitting directly
On the ground.
Okay.
Yeah. So they had a special place, and there's a lot to learn from designing mosques. Is that basically these were refugees, and if you look at how most of the churches, I don't know what it's like here, but certainly when refugees entered into the system and where we are, it was the churches that opened the doors and the mosques that closed them. Where actually, if they understood the Sunnah, it would be the exact opposite. We will welcome all of the refugees. Not only the refugees, the Majaneen, all of those people in Abdalaziz's school, send them to the mosque. I won't send them to the mosque. Why? Because I know how they'd be treated. It's disappointing, isn't it? طيب. Any other questions? The next hadith is a long one. No, we should do things in order. No, I'll read it, inshallah, we'll maybe just cover. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حودي بين عدن إلى عمان. My hawd. The hawd is it's translated here as a cistern. Basically my pond or my pool is between Aden, which is in the Yemen, and Amman, which is in Jordan. شرابه أبيض من اللبن. The drink is more white or whiter than milk. وأحلى من العسل, and more sweet than honey. من شرب منه شربة لا يظمأ بعدها أبدا. Whoever takes one gulp, whoever takes one sip, he will never taste thirst after that sip. وأول من يرده سأعليك المهاجرين. Let me see how he translates. The destitute emigrants. Now, the word sa'alik, sa'laka, I'm going to give you 4 definitions, right, from the Arabic. And I told you that some of this I'll just be reflecting on together, which doesn't seem anybody wants to talk today. So, and some of it will be looking at specific words. And this is quite important to think about what this word means. Sa'laka means to become poor. Not to be poor, but to become poor. What's the difference?
You were rich before and then you became poor.
Yeah. Is that what it means? You were rich at one point and now you're not. To become poor.
Maybe you lost something.
You lost something.
You had to leave everything behind, maybe.
Okay.
Disattach yourself from things. You don't let things get a hold of you.
Okay, so you can still have the wealth, but you become poor because it's not really yours. It just happens to be in your possession. So it's there, but you recognize it's not yours, it's Allah's, and you're just looking after it until it's taken away from you. And when it's taken away from you, it wasn't yours in the first place. So you're not attached in any way. So you're right, and you're right, and you're right, because each one of those has got a slightly different meaning. So when he talks about as-sa'aliq, he's talking about those people who became poor. And some of them, we're going to come across one of them, they literally had complete wealth. They were the richest people in Makkah. Then they became the poorest people in Makkah. Among them was Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan. He became completely bankrupt 4 times. And then he became a multimillionaire. And then he became bankrupt. And he became a multimillionaire. And he became bankrupt 4 times. He became completely, absolutely nothing. And then at one point, his caravan was so large, you couldn't see the end of it. the number of camels that were carrying his goods, you couldn't see the end of it as it entered into Medina. It's not about the wealth in terms of it's their connection. So became poor. The other one is to make soup. How can these two verbs, or this one verb, have two meanings? Or is there some connection between soup and poverty? Simple. Soup kitchen. Oh, he is good. I love that. He's such a Sufi. You know why I say that? Is because I wanted to explain to Idris. Idris is he's very kind of specific in his food at the moment. If it doesn't look right or the texture's not right, there's no way you're going to get him to eat it. So he knows rice. Rice, he loves rice. So if you can see the rice in the food, it's better than if it's hidden. So alhamdulillah, the rice he could work out, there's rice under this plate of food. Abrar prepared the plate for us. So I'm thinking, how am I going to get him to eat the dal? So I said, it's curry. Because if I'd said it was salan, for some reason he wouldn't have eaten it. So I says, it's curry. And he's looking at me, he says, this ain't curry. So I was going to say, it's Sufi curry, all right. But I didn't. But in my heart, I wanted to tell him, this is what you get when you come to the camp. Don't you remember from last year? And I wanted to say that because he enjoyed it last year. I was trying to say, now how do I say this to him? There's some barakah in that food, which is specific to this camp. Isn't there? Huh? There's something which is specific to the food that we have in the camp here. I don't know what it is. And I'm not even going to think about it or investigate. It doesn't matter. All I know is I'm going to eat as much of it as I possibly can. And he's going to eat it. And I'm going to try and convince him logically and linguistically that he should eat it. So I'm thinking, should I tell him it's Sufi, or should I tell him it's the camp food, or should I say it's sweet? Alhamdulillah, he's just ate it. So it was enough. Making soup is something very specific. Soup kitchen. And do you know what the best food on the planet is?
Food making with love.
Food made with love. Oh, yes. This is why I like coming to Sweden. You never get the textbook answer. I'm expecting somebody to give me a hadith to say, خير الطعام. The best of food is the following. And they go, خير الطعام, خير الطعام, خير الطعام. Google says, خير الطعام, sunnah.com, خير الطعام, until you get, there's two hadiths that say خير الطعام. Okay, and then they tell me what خير الطعام is. But one of them is, actually, خير الطعام is not the correct hadith. You just think, I'm working out. I was أفضل الطعام. Is فضل, just something random. After Sayyidatuna Khadija, which we will keep aside in terms of women of this ummah, with the exception of Sayyidatuna Khadija, who is alone, unique in her status, apart from Sayyidatuna Khadija, who's the best woman? Sorry? Oh, yes, because she's connected to Sayyidatuna Khadija. Okay, we'll put Sayyidatuna Fatima aside. Okay, now who? You can politely say, no, I'm not going to make a judgment like that. That's absolutely right, unless you want to mention the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, فضل سيدة النساء فضل عائشة على سائر النساء كفضل الثريد على سائر الطعام. You have to help me with this. Fadl, the blessing, the preference, I think is the preference of Aisha over the remaining women that has not been mentioned so far, the two that you've mentioned, over all other women, is like the preference of soup over other foods. And he mentioned specifically tharid. And this sa'aliq means to prepare tharid. Any ideas why tharid is greater than any other food? And those people that know Pakistani cuisine, soup doesn't mean the stuff that you get from Lidl. Real soup, when we're talking about tharid, is closer to halim, if anybody knows halim, than anything else. Now you need to tell the others that don't know about Pakistani cuisine, what is halim? And those that know about trädet can explain what trädet is. You seem to have nodded when I mentioned.
It's like a kind of stew, isn't it?
It's kind of a stew, more a stew than a soup.
Grain, is it barley maybe?
So it's got barley in it, or some kind of grain. It's got meat, and what's the meat look like?
It's really soft.
It's really soft. Why is it? How did you get it? How did your mum get it so soft?
It's been cooked for a very long time.
She's been cooking it like for 24 hours. That's trädet. That's what trädet is like. So you cook it till the meat comes off the bone. You cook it so long it just gets tender, and you put in some grain of some sort, and you mix it all up, and it's just wonderful. Why is that the best food? Is related. Actually, it's time that we'll talk about that afterwards. So, inshallah, I'll explain to you why trädet is so important and what it's got to do with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's great grandfather. So I believe I'll join you after.